Chapter 77. Dress. Chapter 1. Say, who has forbidden the adornment with clothes given by Allah, which He has produced for His slaves? Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger said, Allah will not look at the person who drags his garment behind him out of conceit. Chapter 2. Whoever dragged his Isar without conceit. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet said, Allah will not look on the day of resurrection at the person who drags his garment behind him out of conceit. On that, Abu Bakr said, O Allah's Messenger, one side of my Isar hangs low. If I do not take care of it, the Prophet said, you are not one of those who do that out of conceit. Narrated Abu Bakr. The solar eclipse occurred while we were sitting with the Prophet. He got up dragging his garment on the ground hurriedly till he reached the mosque. The people turned to the mosque and he offered a 2 rakat prayer, whereupon the eclipse was over and he traced us again and said, the sun and the moon are 2 signs among the signs of Allah. So if you see a thing like this eclipse, then offer the prayer and invoke Allah till He remove that state. Chapter 3. To tuck up or roll up the clothes. Narrated Abu Juhayfa. I saw Bilal bringing a short spear or stick and fixing it in the ground, and then he proclaimed the Iqamah of the prayer, and I saw Allah's Messenger coming out wearing a cloak with its sleeves rolled up. He then offered a 2 rakat prayer while facing the stick, and I saw the people and animals passing in front of him beyond the stick. Chapter 4. The part of the garment that hangs below the ankles is in the fire. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, the part of an Isar which hangs below the ankles is in the fire. Chapter 5. Whoever drags his garment out of pride and arrogance. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Allah's Messenger, Allah will not look on the day of resurrection at a person who drags his Isar behind him out of pride and arrogance. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet or Abul Qasim said, while a man was walking, clad in a 2-piece garment and proud of himself, with his hair well combed, suddenly Allah made him sink into the earth, and he will go on sinking into it till the day of resurrection. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger said, while a man was dragging his Isar on the ground behind him, suddenly Allah made him sink into the earth, and he will go on sinking into it till the day of resurrection. Narrated Abu Hurairah, that they heard the Prophet narrating as above. Number 680. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger said, whoever drags his clothes on the ground out of pride and arrogance, Allah will not look at him on the day of resurrection. Chapter 6. The Fringed Isar. Narrated Aisha. The wife of the Prophet, the wife of Rifa al-Qurasi, came to Allah's Messenger while I was sitting, and Abu Bakr was also there. She said, O Allah's Apostle, I was the wife of Rifa, and he divorced me irrevocably. And then I married Abdur Rahman bin As-Zubair, who by Allah, O Allah's Messenger, has only something like a fringe of a garment, showing the fringe of her veil. Khalid bin Sa'id, who was standing at the door, for he had not been admitted, heard her statement and said, O Abu Bakr, why do you not stop this lady from saying such things openly before Allah's Messenger? No, by Allah, Allah's Messenger did nothing but smiled. Then he said to the lady, perhaps you want to return to Rifa. That is impossible unless Abdur Rahman consummate his marriage with you. That became the tradition after him. Chapter 7, The Rida. Narrated Ali. The Prophet asked for his Rida, put it on and set out walking. Said bin Haritha and I followed him till he reached the house where Harinsa bin Abdul Muttalib was present and asked for permission to enter. And they gave us permission. Chapter 8, Wearing of Shirts. Narrated Ibn Umar. A man asked, O Allah's Apostle, what kind of clothes should a murim wear? The Prophet said, a murim should not wear a shirt, trousers, a hooded cloak, or kufs, socks made from thick fabric or leather, unless he cannot get sandals, in which case he should cut the part of the kuf that covers the ankles. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet came to visit Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul after he had been put in his grave. The Prophet ordered that Abdullah be taken out. He was taken out and was placed on the knees of the Prophet, who blew his blessed breath on him and dressed the body with his own shirt, and Allah knows better. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. When Abdullah bin Ubdi bin Salul died, his son came to Allah's Messenger and said, O Allah's Apostle, give me your shirt, so that I may shroud my father's body in it, and please offer a funeral prayer for him and invoke Allah for his forgiveness. The Prophet gave him his shirt and said to him, inform us when you finish and the funeral procession is ready. Call us. When he had finished, he told the Prophet, and the Prophet proceeded to order his funeral prayers. But Umar stopped him and said, didn't Allah forbid you to offer the funeral prayer for the hypocrites when he said, whether you, O Muhammad, ask forgiveness for them or ask not forgiveness for them, and even if you ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. 980. Then there was revealed, and never, O Muhammad, pray for any of them that dies, nor stand at this grave. 934. Thenceforth the Prophet did not offer funeral prayers for the hypocrites. Chapter 9. The Jaib Pocket. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger has set forth an example for a miser and a charitable person by comparing them to two men wearing two iron cloaks, and their hands are raised to their breasts and necks. Whenever the charitable man tries to give a charitable gift, his iron cloak expands till it becomes so wide that it will cover his fingertips and obliterate his tracks. And whenever the miser wants to give a charitable gift, his cloak becomes very tight over him and every ring gets stuck to its place. Abu Huraira added, I saw Allah's Messenger putting his finger in the chest pocket of his shirt, like that if you but saw him trying to widen the opening of his shirt, but it did not widen. Chapter 10. Wearing a cloak of narrow sleeves while on a journey. Narrated Al-Mughira bin Shuba. The Prophet went to answer the call of nature, and when he returned, I met him with water, and he performed the ablution while he was wearing a sham cloak. He rinsed his mouth, but put the water in his nose and blew it out, washed his face, and tried to take his hands out of his sleeves. But they were too narrow, so he took out his hands from under his chest and washed them, and then passed his wet hands over his head and kuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. Chapter 11. To wear a woolen cloak during the Ghazawat. Narrated Al-Mughira. One night I was with the Prophet on a journey. He asked me, have you got water with you? I replied, yes. So he got down from his she-camel and went away till he disappeared in the darkness of the night. Then he came back, and I poured water for him from the pot for the ablution. He washed his face and hands while he was wearing a woolen cloak, the sleeves of which were narrow, so he could not take his arms out of it. So he took them out from underneath the cloak. Then he washed his forearms and passed his wet hands over his head. Then I tried to take off his kuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather, but he said, leave them, for I have performed ablution before putting them on. And so he passed his wet hands over them. Chapter 12. Al-Kaaba. Narrated Al-Miswar bin Makrama. Allah's Messenger distributed some Kaabas, but he did not give anything to Makrama. Makrama said to me, O my son, let us go to Allah's Messenger. So I proceeded with him, and he said, go in and call him or me. So I called the Prophet for him. The Prophet came out to him, wearing one of those Kaabas, and said to Makrama, I have kept this for you. Makrama looked at it and said, Makrama is satisfied now. Narrated Uqba bin Amir. A silken faruj was presented to Allah's Messenger, and he put it on and offered a prayer in it. When he finished the prayer, he took it off violently, as if he disliked it, and said, this garment does not befit those who fear Allah. Chapter 13. Hooded Cloaks. Narrated Mutamir. I heard my father saying, I saw Anas wearing a yellow hooded cloak of Qas. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. A man said, O Allah's Messenger, what type of clothes should a murim wear? Allah's Messenger replied, do not wear shirts, turbans, trousers, hooded cloaks or kuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. But if someone cannot get sandals, then he can wear kuffs after cutting them short below the ankles. Do not wear clothes touched by safoon or wars, two kinds of perfumes. Chapter 14. Trousers. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, whoever cannot get an isar can wear trousers, and whoever cannot wear sandals can wear kuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. Narrated Abdullah. A man got up and said, O Allah's Messenger, what do you order us to wear when we assume the state of Iram? The Prophet replied, Do not wear shirts, trousers, turbans, hooded cloaks, or kufs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. But if a man has no sandals, he can wear kufs after cutting them short below the ankles, and do not wear clothes touched with perfumes, or saffron or wars. Chapter 15. Turbans. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet said, A murim should not wear a shirt, or a turban, trousers, hooded cloaks, a garment touched with perfumes or of saffron or wars, or kufs, socks made from thick fabric or leather, except if one has no sandals, in which case he should cut short the kufs below the ankles. Chapter 16. At Takanu. Narrated Aisha. Some Muslim men emigrated to Ethiopia, whereupon Abu Bakr also prepared himself for the emigration. But the Prophet said to him, Wait, for I hope that Allah will allow me also to emigrate. Abu Bakr said, Let my father and mother be sacrificed for you. Do you hope that emigration? The Prophet said, Yes. So Abu Bakr waited to accompany the Prophet, and fed 2 she-camels he had on the leaves of as-samud tree regularly for 4 months. One day, while we were sitting in our house at midday, someone said to Abu Bakr, Here is Allah's Messenger, coming with his head and a part of his face covered with a cloth covering at an hour. He never used to come to us. Abu Bakr said, Let my father and mother be sacrificed for you. O Prophet, an urgent matter must have brought you here at this hour. The Prophet came and asked the permission to enter, and he was allowed. The Prophet entered and said to Abu Bakr, Let those who are with you go out. Abu Bakr replied, There is no stranger. They are your family. Let my father be sacrificed for you, O Allah's Apostle. The Prophet said, I have been allowed to leave Mecca. Abu Bakr said, I shall accompany you, O Allah's Messenger. Let my father be sacrificed for you. The Prophet said, Yes. Abu Bakr said, O Allah's Messenger, let my father be sacrificed for you. Take one of these 2 she-camels of mine. The Prophet said, I will take it only after paying its price. So he prepared their baggage and put their journey food in a leather bag. And Asma bint Abu Bakr cut a piece of her girdle and tied the mouth of the leather bag with it. That is why she was called Datan Nitakaln. Then the Prophet and Abu Bakr went to a cave in a mountain called Toir, and remained there for 3 nights. Abdullah bin Abu Bakr, who was a young, intelligent man, used to stay with them at night and leave before dawn, so that in the morning he with the Quraysh at Mecca, as if he had spent the night among them. If he heard of any plot contrived by the Quraysh against the Prophet and Abu Bakr, he would understand it and return to inform them of it when it became dark. Amir bin Fuhayra, the freed slave of Abu Bakr, used to graze a flock of milch sheep for them, and he used to take those sheep to them when an hour had passed after the Isha prayer. They would sleep soundly till Amir bin Fuhayra awakened them when it was still dark. He used to do that in each of those 3 nights. Chapter 17. The Helmet. Narrated Anas bin Malik. In the year of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet entered Mecca wearing a helmet on his head. Chapter 18. Al-Burud, Al-Hibar, and Ash-Shamla. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Once I was walking with Allah's Messenger, and he was wearing a Najram burd with thick margin. A Bedouin followed him and pulled his burd so violently that I noticed the side of the shoulder of Allah's Messenger affected by the margin of the burd because of that violent pull. The Bedouin said, "O Muhammad, give me some of Allah's wealth which is with you." Allah's Messenger turned and looked at him, and smiling, he ordered that he be given something. Narrated Abu Hasim. Shal bin Saad said, a lady came with a burda. Saad then asked the people, "Do you know what burda is?" Somebody said, "Yes, it is a shamla with a woven border." Saad added. The lady said, "O Allah's Messenger, I have knitted this burda with my own hands for you to wear it." Allah's Messenger took it, and he was in need of it. Allah's messenger came out to us, and he was wearing it as an izar. A man from the people felt it and said, "O Allah's Messenger, give it to me to wear." The Prophet said, "Yes." Then he sat there for some time, and when he went to his house, he folded it and sent it to him. The people said to that man, "You have not done a right thing. You asked him for it, though you know that he does not put down anybody's request." The man said, "By Allah, I have only asked him so that it may be my shroud when I die." Saul added, "Late it was his shroud." Narrated Abu Huraira. I heard Allah's messenger saying, "From among my followers, a group of 70,000 will enter paradise without being asked for their accounts. Their faces will be shining like the moon." Ukasha bin Musin al-Asada got up, lifting his covering sheet, and said, "O Allah's Messenger, invoke Allah for me that he may include me with them." The Prophet said, "O Allah, make him from them." Then another man from Al-Ansar got up and said, "O Allah's Messenger, invoke Allah for me that he may include me with them." On that, Allah's Messenger said, "Ukasha has anticipated you." Narrated Qatada. I asked Anas what kind of clothes was most beloved to the Prophet. He replied, "The hibra, a kind of Yemenese cloth. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The most beloved garment to the Prophet to wear was the hibra, a kind of Yemenese cloth. Narrated Aisha. The wife of the Prophet, when Allah's Messenger died, he was covered with a hibra burd, green square decorated garment. Chapter 19. Al-Aqsiya and Al-Kamais. Narrated Aisha and Abdullah bin Abbas. When the decease of Allah's Messenger got aggravated, he covered his face with a kamisa, but when he became short of breath, he would remove it from his face and say, "It is like that. May Allah curse the Jews, Christians, because they took the graves of their prophets as places of worship." By that he warned his followers of imitating them by doing that which they did. Narrated Aisha. Allah's Messenger offered prayer while he was wearing a kamisa of his that had printed marks. He looked at its marks And when he finished prayer, he said, "Take this camisa of mine to Abu Jam, for it has just now diverted my attention from my prayer, and bring to me the Anbijania, a plain thick sheet of Abu Jam bin Hudhaifa bin Ghanim, who belonged to Bani Adi bin Kab." Narrated Abu Burda. Aisha brought out to us a kisa and an isar and said, "The Prophet died while wearing those two, kisa and a square black piece of woolen cloth, isar a sheet cloth garment covering the lower half of the body." Chapter 20. Ishtimal as-Sama. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet had forbidden A. the mulamasa and munabada bargains, B. the offering of two prayers, one after the morning compulsory prayer till the sun rises, and the others after the Asr prayer till the sun sets. C. He also forbade that one should sit wearing one garment, nothing of which covers his private parts. D. And prevent them from exposure to the sky. E. He also forbade ishtimalas sama. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Allah's Messenger forbade two ways of wearing clothes and two kinds of dealings. A. He forbade the dealings of the mulamasa and the munabada. In the mulamasa transaction, the buyer just touches the garment he wants to buy at night or by daytime, and that touch would oblige him to buy it. In the munabada, one man throws his garment at another, and the latter throws his at the former, and the barter is complete. And valid without examining the two objects or being satisfied with them. B. The two ways of wearing clothes were ishtimal as-sama, to cover one's shoulder with one's garment and leave the other bare, and the other way was to wrap oneself with the garment while one was sitting in such a way that nothing of that garment would cover one's private part. Chapter 21. Al-Itiba. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger forbade two types of dresses. A. To sit in an itiba posture in one garment, nothing of which covers his private parts. B. To cover one side of his body with one garment and leave the other side bare. The Prophet also forbade the mulamasa and munabada. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet forbade istimal as-sama, and that a man should sit in an istiba posture in one garment, nothing of which covers his private parts. Chapter 22. The Black Camisa. Narrated Khalid bint Khalid. The Prophet was given some clothes, including a black camisa. The Prophet said, "To whom shall we give this to wear?" The people kept silent, whereupon the Prophet said, "Fetch Khalid for me." I, Khalid, was carried as I was small girl at that time. The Prophet took the camisa in his hands and made me wear it and said, "May you live so long that your dress will wear out and you will mend it many times." On the camisa there were some green or pale designs. The Prophet saw these designs and said, "O Khalid, this is Sana in an Ethiopian word meaning beautiful." Narrated Anas. When Sulaim gave birth to a child, she said to me, O Anas, watch this boy carefully and do not give him anything to eat or drink until you have taken him to the Prophet tomorrow morning for the tonic. So the next morning I took the child to the Prophet who was sitting in a garden and was wearing a Huraytiya kamisa and was branding the she-camel on which he had come during the conquest of Mecca. Chapter 23. Green Clothes. Narrated Ikrimah. Rifa divorced his wife, whereupon Abdurrahman bin Asibir al-Qurasi married her. Aisha said that the lady came wearing a green veil and complained to her, Aisha, of her husband and showed her a green spot on her skin caused by beating. It was the habit of ladies to support each other, so when Allah's messenger came, Aisha said, I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing woman. Look, her skin is greener than her clothes. When Abdurrahman heard that his wife had gone to the Prophet, he came with his 2 sons from another wife. She said, By Allah, I have done no wrong to him, but he is impotent and is as useless to me as this, holding and showing the fringe of her garment. Abdurrahman said, By Allah, O Allah's messenger, she has told a lie. I am very strong and can satisfy her, but she is disobedient and wants to go back to Rifa. Allah's messenger said to her, If that is your intention, then know that it is unlawful for you to remarry Rifa unless Abdurrahman has had sexual intercourse with you. Then the Prophet saw 2 boys with Abdurrahman and asked him, Are these your sons? On that Abdurrahman said, Yes. The Prophet said, You claim what you claim, that he is impotent, but by Allah, these boys resemble him as a crow resembles a crow. Chapter 24. White Clothes. Narrated Sa'd. On the day of the Battle of Uhud, on the right and on the left of the Prophet were 2 men wearing white clothes, and I had neither seen them before nor did I see them afterwards. Narrated Abu Dar. I came to the Prophet while he was wearing white clothes and sleeping. Then I went back to him again after he had got up from his sleep. He said, Nobody says, None has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and then later on he dies while believing in that, except that he will enter paradise. I said, Even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft. He said, Even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft. I said, Even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft. He said, Even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft. I said, Even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft. He said, Even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft. In spite of the Abu Dar's dislike, Abu Abdullah said, This is at the time of death, or before it if one repents and regrets and says, None has the right to be worshipped but Allah, he will be forgiven his sins. Chapter 25. The wearing of silk clothes by men. Narrated Abba Uthman an-Nadi. While we were with Utbah bin Farkad at Adharbijan, there came Umar's letter indicating that Allah's apostle had forbidden the use of silk except this much. Then he pointed with his index and middle fingers. To our knowledge, by that he meant embroidery. Narrated Abu Uthman. While we were at Adharbijan, Umar wrote to us, Allah's messenger forbade wearing silk except this much. Then the Prophet approximated his two fingers, index and middle fingers, to illustrate that. To us, Sahih, the sub-narrator, raised up his middle and index fingers. Narrated Abu Uthman. While we were with Utbah, Umar wrote to us, the Prophet said, there is none who wears silk in this world except that he will wear nothing of it in the hereafter. Abu Uthman pointed out with his middle and index fingers. This hadith has also been narrated by Abu Uthman. Narrated Ibn Abi Layla. While Hudayfa was at Al-Madain, he asked for water, whereupon the chief of the village brought him water in a silver cup. Hudayfa threw at him and said, I have thrown it only because I have forbidden him to use it, but he does not stop using it. Allah's Messenger said, gold, silver, silk and dibaj, a kind of silk, are for them unbelievers in this world and for you Muslims in the hereafter. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, whoever wears silk in this world shall not wear it in the hereafter. Narrated Thabit. I heard Ibn as-Zubayr delivering a sermon saying, Muhammad said, whoever wears silk in this world shall not wear it in the hereafter. Narrated Ibn as-Zubayr. I heard Umar saying, the Prophet said, whoever wears silk in this world shall not wear it in the hereafter. This hadith is also narrated through Umar ibn al-Khattab. Narrated Umar bin al-Khattab Ra. Allah's Messenger said, none wears silk in this world but he who will have no share in the hereafter. Chapter 26. Whoever just touches silk but does not wear it. Narrated Al-Bara. The Prophet was given a silk garment as a gift, and we started touching it with our hands and admiring it. On that the Prophet said, do you wonder at this? We said, yes. He said, the handkerchiefs of Sa'd bin Mu'ad in paradise are better than this. Chapter 27. The use of silk in bedding. Narrated Hudayfa. The Prophet forbade us to drink out of gold and silver vessels, or eat in it, and also forbade the wearing of silk and dibaj, or sitting on it. Chapter 28. The wearing of kasi. Narrated Ibn Asib. The Prophet forbade us to use the red mayatir and to use al-kasi. Chapter 29. Silk is allowed for men suffering from an itch. Narrated Anas. The Prophet allowed As-Zubayr and Abdur Rahman to wear silk because they were suffering from an itch. Chapter 30. Silk for women. Narrated Ali bin Abi Talib. The Prophet gave me a silk suit. I went out wearing it, but seeing the signs of anger on his face, I tore it and distributed it among my wives. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Umar saw a silk suit being sold, so he said, O Allah's Messenger, why don't you buy it so that you may wear it when delegates come to you? And also on Fridays, the Prophet said, this is worn only by him who has no share in the hereafter. Afterwards the Prophet sent to Umar a silk suit suitable for wearing. Umar said to the Prophet, you have given it to me to wear. Yet I have heard you saying about it what you said. The Prophet said, I sent it to you so that you might either sell it or give it to somebody else to wear. Narrated Anas bin Malik that he had seen Kulthum, the daughter of Allah's Messenger, wearing a red silk garment. Chapter 31. The prophet Sahih used to be contented with whatever clothes or mats were available. Narrated Ibn Abbas. For 1 year I wanted to ask Umar about the two women who helped each other against the prophet, but I was afraid of him. One day he dismounted his riding animal and went among the trees of Arak to answer the call of nature. And when he returned I asked him, and he said, they were Aisha and Hafsa. Then he added, we never used to give significance to ladies in the days of the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, but when Islam came and Allah mentioned their rights, we used to give them their rights, but did not allow them to interfere in our affairs. Once there was some dispute between me and my wife, and she answered me back in a loud voice. I said to her, strange, you can retort in this way. She said, yes, do you say this to me while your daughter troubles Allah's messenger? So I went to Hafsa and said to her, I warn you not to disobey Allah and His Apostle. I first went to Hafsa and then to Salama and told her the same. She said to me, O Umar, it surprises me that you interfere in our affairs so much that you would poke your nose even into the affairs of Allah's Messenger and his wives. So she rejected my advice. There was an Ansari man. Whenever he was absent from Allah's Messenger and I was present there, I used to convey to him what had happened on that day. And when I was absent and he was present there, he used to convey to me what had happened as regards news from Allah's Messenger. During that time, all the rulers of the nearby lands had surrendered to Allah's Messenger except the king of Ghassan in Sham, and we were afraid that he might attack us. All of a sudden the Ansari came and said, a great event has happened. I asked him, what is it? Has the Ghassani king come? He said, greater than that. Allah's Messenger has divorced his wives. I went to them and found all of them weeping in their dwellings, and the Prophet had ascended to an upper room of his. At the door of the room there was a slave, to whom I went and said, ask the permission for me to enter. He admitted me, and I entered to see the Prophet lying on a mat that had left its imprint on his side. Under his head there was a leather pillow stuffed with palm fires. Behold, there were some hides hanging there, and some grass for tanning. Then I mentioned what I had said to Hafsa and Salama, and what reply Salama had given me. Allah's Messenger smiled and stayed there for 29 days, and then came down. See Hadith number 648, volume 3 for details. Narrated Salama. One night the Prophet woke up saying, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. How many afflictions have been sent down tonight, and how many treasures have been sent down, disclosed. Who will go and wake up for prayers the lady dwellers of these rooms? Many well-dressed soul people in this world will be naked on the day of resurrection. Chapter 32. To invoke for the one wearing a new garment. Narrated Khalid bint Khalid. Some clothes were presented to Allah's Messenger as a gift, and there was a black kamisa with it. The Prophet asked his companions, to whom do you suggest we give this kamisa? The people kept quiet. Then he said, bring me Khalid. So I was brought to him, and he dressed me with it with his own hands, and said twice, may you live so long that you will wear out many garments. He then started looking at the embroidery. of that camisa and said, "O Khalid, this is Sana." Sana in Ethiopian language means beautiful. Ishak, a sub-narrator, said, "A woman of my family had told me that she had seen the camisa worn by Khalid. Chapter 33. Men are forbidden to use saffron. Narrated Anas. The Prophet forbade men to use saffron. Chapter 34. The garment dyed with saffron. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet forbade Murims to wear clothes dyed with wars or saffron. Chapter 35. The red garment. Narrated Al-Bara. The Prophet was of a modest height. I saw him wearing a red suit, and I did not see anything better than him. Chapter 36. The red mitara. Narrated Al-Bara. The Prophet ordered us to observe 7 things: to visit the sick, follow funeral processions, say, "May Allah bestow His mercy on you," to the sneezer if he says, "Praise be to Allah." He forbade us to wear silk, dibaj, kasi, and istibark, various kind of silken clothes, or to use red mayatir, silk cushions. See Hadith number 253a, volume 8. Chapter 37. Sibtiya and other shoes. Narrated Sa'id Abu Maslama. I asked Anas bin Malik, "Did the Prophet used to offer the prayers with his shoes on?" He said yes. Narrated Sa'id al-Makburi. Ubay bin Jurayj said to Abdullah bin Umar, "I see you doing 4 things which are not done by your friends." Ibn Umar said, "What are they, O Ibn Jurayj?" He said, "I see that you do not touch except the 2 Yemenite corners of the Kaaba while performing the tawaf, and I see you wearing the Sabtiya shoes, and I see you dyeing your hair with sifra, and I see that when you are in Mecca, the people assume the state of Iram. On seeing the crescent on the first day of Dhul Hijjah, while you do not assume the state of Iram till the day of Tarwiyah, 8 Dhul Hijjah." Abdullah bin Umar said to him, "As for the corners of the Kaaba, I have not seen Allah's Messenger touching except the 2 Yemenite corners. As for the Sabtiya shoes, I saw Allah's Messenger wearing leather shoes that had no hair, and he used to perform the ablution while wearing them. Therefore, I like to wear such shoes. As regards dyeing with sifra, I saw Allah's Messenger dyeing his hair with it, so I like to dye my hair with it. As regards the crescent of Dhul Hijjah, I have not seen Allah's Messenger assuming the state of Iram till his she-camel set out on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah." Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's Messenger forbade that a Murim should wear clothes dyed with saffron or wars, and said, "Whoever has no shoes can put on kufs, socks made from thick fabric or leather, after cutting it below the ankles." Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "Whoever has no isar waist sheet can wear trousers, and whoever has no sandals can wear kufs, socks made from thick fabric or leather, but cut them short below the ankles." Chapter 38. While putting on shoes, start with right foot. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet used to like starting from the right in performing ablution, combing his hair and putting on his shoes. Chapter 39. Do not walk wearing one shoe only. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, if you want to put on your shoes, put on the right shoe first, and if you want to take them off, take the left one first. Let the right shoe be the first to be put on and the last to be taken off. Chapter 40. One should take off the left shoe first. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, none of you should walk wearing one shoe only. He should either put on both shoes or put on no shoes whatsoever. Chapter 41. Straps in a sandal. Narrated Anas. The sandal of the Prophet had 2 straps. Narrated Isa bin Taman. Anas bin Malik brought out for us 2 sandals having 2 straps. Thabit al-Banani said, these were the sandals of the Prophet. Chapter 42. The red tent of leather. Narrated Abu Juhayfa. I came to the Prophet while he was inside a red leather tent, and I saw Bilal taking the remaining water of the ablution of the Prophet, and the people were taking off that water and rubbing it on their faces, and whoever could not get anything of it would share the moisture of the hand of his companion and then rub it on his face. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet called for the Ansar and gathered them in a leather tent. Chapter 43. To sit on a hasir. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet used to construct a loom with a hasir at night in order to pray therein. And during the day, he used to spread it out and sit on it. The people started coming to the Prophet at night to offer the prayer behind him when their number increased. The Prophet faced them and said, O people, do only those good deeds which you can do, for Allah does not get tired of giving reward till you get tired. And the best deeds to Allah are the incessant ones, though they were few. Chapter 44. Garments having fold buttons. Narrated Al-Miswar bin Makrama. My father, Makrama, said to me, I have come to know that some cloaks have come to the Prophet and he is distributing them. So, O my son, take me to him. We went to the Prophet and found him in the house. My father said to me, O my son, call the Prophet for me. I found it hard to do so, so I said surprisingly, shall I call Allah's Messenger for you? My father said, O my son, he is not a tyrant. So I called him, and he came out wearing a dibaj cloak having gold buttons, and said, O Makrama, I kept this for you. The Prophet then gave it to him. Chapter 45. Gold Rings. Narrated Al-Bara bin Asib. The Prophet forbade us to use 7 things. He forbade using gold rings, silk, istabrak, dibaj, red mayatir, al-qasi, and silver utensils. He ordered us to do 7 other things: to pay a visit to the sick, to follow funeral processions, to say, May Allah be merciful to you, to a sneezer if he says praise be to Allah, to return greetings, to accept invitations, to help others to fulfill their oaths, and to help the oppressed ones. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet forbade the wearing of a gold ring. Narrated Abdullah. Allah's Messenger wore a gold or silver ring and placed its stone towards the palm of his hand. The people also started wearing gold rings like it, but when the Prophet saw them wearing such rings, he threw away that golden ring and then wore a silver ring. Chapter 46. Silver Rings. Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's Messenger wore a gold ring or a silver ring and placed its stone towards the palm of his hand and had the name Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, engraved on it. The people also started wearing gold rings like it, but when the Prophet saw them wearing such rings, he threw away his own ring and said, I will never wear it, and then wore a silver ring. Whereupon the people too started wearing silver rings. Ibn Umar added, after the Prophet, Abu Bakr wore the ring, and then Umar, and then Uthman wore it till it fell in the Aris well from Uthman. Chapter 47. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger wore a gold ring, then he threw it and said, I will never wear it. The people also threw the gold rings. Narrated Anas bin Malik, that he saw a silver ring on the hand of Allah's Messenger for one day only. Then the people had silver rings made for themselves and wore it. On that Allah's Messenger threw away their rings as well. For the details of this hadith, see Fathul Bari, Volume 12, page 438. Chapter 48. Stone of the Ring. Narrated Humayd. Anas was asked, did the Prophet wear a ring? Anas said, once he delayed the Isha prayer till midnight. Then he came facing us as if I am now looking at the glitter of his ring, and said, the people have offered their prayers and slept, but you have been in prayer as you have been waiting for it. Narrated Anas, the ring of the Prophet was of silver, and its stone was of silver too. Chapter 49. An Iron Ring. Narrated Sahl. A woman came to the Prophet and said, I have come to present myself to you for marriage. She kept standing for a long period, during which period the Prophet looked at her carefully. When she stayed for a long period, a man said to the Prophet, if you are not in need of her, then marry her to me. The Prophet said, have you got anything to give her as mahr? The man said, no. The Prophet said, go to your house and search for something. The man went and came back to say, by Allah, I could not find anything. The Prophet said, go again and search for something, even if it be an iron ring. He went again and came back saying, no, by Allah, I could not get even an iron ring. The man had only an isar and had no rida, upper garment. He said, I will give her my isar as mahr. On that the Prophet said, your isar, if she wears it, nothing of it will remain on you, and if you wear it, nothing of it will be on her. The man went aside and sat down. When the Prophet saw him leaving, after a while, he called back and asked, how much Quran do you know by heart? He said, I know such and such surahs. Naming some surahs, the Prophet said, I marry her to you for the amount of Quran you know by heart. Chapter 50. To engrave a ring. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Allah's Messenger wanted to write a letter to a group of people or some non-Arabs. it was said to him, "They do not accept any leather unless it is stamped." So the prophet had a silver ring made for himself, and on it was engraved, "Muhammad, the messenger of Allah," as if I am now looking at the glitter of the ring on the finger or in the palm of the prophet. Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's messenger had a silver ring made for himself, and it was worn by him on his hand. Afterwards it was worn by Abu Bakr, and then by Umar, and then by Uthman, till it fell in the Aris well. On that ring was engraved, "Muhammad, the messenger of Allah." Chapter 51. To wear the ring on the little finger. Narrated Anas. The Prophet got a ring made for himself and said, "I have got a ring made for myself, and engraved a certain engraving on it, so none of you should get such an engraving on his ring. I saw the glitter of the ring on his little finger." Chapter 52. Taking a ring for stamping letters. Narrated Anas bin Malik. When the Prophet intended to write to the Byzantines, it was said to him, "Those people do not read your letter unless it is stamped." So the Prophet took a silver ring and got "Muhammad, the Apostle of Allah" engraved on it, as if I am now looking at its glitter in his hand. Chapter 53. Keeping the stone of the ring towards the palm. Narrated Abdullah. The Prophet had a golden ring made for himself, and when he wore it, he used to turn its stone towards the palm of his hand. So the people too had gold made for themselves. The Prophet then ascended the pulpit, and after glorifying and praising Allah, he said, "I had it made for me, but now I will never wear it again." He threw it away, and then the people threw away their rings too. Juwayriyah, a sub-narrator, said, "I think Anas said that the Prophet was wearing the ring in his right hand." Chapter 54. None should have the same engraving made on his ring as the engraving on my ring. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Allah's messenger took a silver ring and had "Muhammad, the Apostle of Allah" engraved on it. The Prophet then said to us, "I have a silver ring with "Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah" engraved on it, so none of you should have the same engraving on his ring. Chapter 55. The engraving of the ring done in 3 lines. Narrated Anas. That when Abu Bakr became the caliph, he wrote a letter to him and stamped it with the Prophet's ring, and the engraving of the ring was in 3 lines, Muhammad in 1 line, Apostle in another line, and Allah in a 3rd line. Anas added, "The ring of the Prophet was in his hand, and after him in Abu Bakr's hand, and then in Umar's hand after Abu Bakr. When Uthman was the caliph, once he was sitting at the well of Aris. He removed the ring from his hand, and while he was trifling with it, dropped into the well. We kept on going to the well with Uthman for 3 days looking for the ring, and finally the well was drained, but the ring was not found." Chapter 56. Rings for women. Narrated Ibn Abbas. I offered the Eid prayer with the Prophet, and he offered prayer before the khutbah sermon. Ibn Abbas added, "After the prayer, the Prophet came towards the rows of the women and ordered them to give alms, and the women started putting their big and small rings in the garment of Bilal." Chapter 57. The wearing of necklaces and sikab by the woman. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet came out on the day of Eid and offered a 2 rakat prayer, and he did not pray any rakat before it, nor after it. Then he went towards the woman and ordered them to give alms. The woman started donating their earring and necklaces. Chapter 58. To borrow a necklace. Narrated Aisha. A necklace belonging to Asma was lost, and the Prophet sent men in its search. The time for the prayer became due, and they were without ablution, and they could not find water. Therefore they prayed without ablution. They mentioned that to the Prophet. Then Allah revealed the verse of Tayammum. Aisha added that she had borrowed the necklace from Asma. Chapter 59. Earrings. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet offered a 2 rakat prayer on Eid day, and he did not offer any nawafil prayer before or after it. He then went towards the woman, and Bilal was accompanying him, and ordered them to give alms, and so the woman started giving their earrings, etc. Chapter 60. As-Sikab for boys. Narrated Abu Huraira. I was with Allah's Messenger in one of the markets of Medina. He left the market, and so did I. Then he asked thrice, "Where is the small child?" Then he said, "Call Al-Hassan bin Ali." So Al-Hassan bin Ali got up and started walking with a necklace of beads around his neck. The Prophet stretched his hand out like this, and Al-Hassan did the same. The Prophet embraced him and said, "O Allah, I love him, so please love him and love those who love him, since Allah's Messenger said that nothing has been dearer to me than Al-Hassan." Chapter 61. Men who are in the similitude of women, and women who are in the similitude of men. Narrated Ibn Abbas. Allah's Messenger cursed those men who are in the similitude assume the manners of women, and those women who are in the similitude assume the manners of men. Chapter 62. The dismissal of such men as are in similitude of women from the houses. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet cursed effeminate men, those men who are in the similitude assume the manners of women, and those women who assume the manners of men. And he said, "Turn them out of your houses." The Prophet turned out such and such man, and Umar turned out such and such woman. Narrated Salama, that once the Prophet was in her house, and an effeminate man was there too. The effeminate man said to Abdullah, Salama's brother, "O Abdullah, if Taif should be conquered tomorrow, I recommend you the daughter of Gailan, for she is so fat that she has 4 curves in the front of her belly, and 8 at the back." So the Prophet said to his wives, "These effeminate men should not enter upon your houses." Chapter 63. To cut short the mustaches. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, "To get the mustaches cut short is characteristic of the fitra." Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said 5 practices are characteristics of the fitra: circumcision, shaving the pubic region, clipping the nails, and cutting the mustaches short. Chapter 64. The clipping of nails. Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's Messenger said, to shave the pubic hair, to clip the nails, and to cut the mustaches short. are characteristics of the fitra. Narrated Abu Huraira. I heard a prophet saying, 5 practices are characteristics of the fitra: circumcision, shaving the pubic hair, cutting the mustaches short, clipping the nails, and depilating the hair of the armpits. Narrated Nafi. Ibn Umar said, the Prophet said, do the opposite of what the pagans do. Keep the beards and cut the mustaches short. Whenever Ibn Umar performed the Hajj or Umrah, he used to hold his beard with his hand and cut whatever remained outside his hold. Chapter 65. To leave the beard. Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's Messenger said, cut the mustaches short and leave the beard as it is. Chapter 66. What is said about grey hair. Narrated Muhammad bin Sirin. I asked Anas, did the Prophet dye his hair? Anas replied, the Prophet did not have except a few grey hairs. Narrated Thabit. Anas was asked whether the Prophet used a hair dye or not. He replied, the Prophet did not have enough grey hair to dye, such that if I wanted to count the fading hairs in his beard, I could have. Narrated Israel. Uthman bin Abdullah bin Ma'uhab said, my people sent me with a bowl of water to Salama. Israel approximated 3 fingers, indicating the small size of the container in which there was some hair of the Prophet. Uthman added, if any person suffered from evil eye or some other disease, he would send a vessel containing water to Salama. I looked into the container that held the hair of the Prophet and saw a few red hairs in it. Narrated Uthman bin Abdullah bin Ma'uhab. I went to Salama and she brought out for us some of the dyed hair of the Prophet. Ibn Ma'uhab also said that Salama had shown him the red hair of the Prophet. Chapter 67. The hair dye. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Jews and Christians do not dye their hair, so you should do the opposite of what they do. Chapter 68. The curly hair. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet was neither conspicuously tall nor short, neither very white nor tawny. His hair was neither much curled nor very straight. Allah sent him as an apostle at the age of 40, and after that he stayed for 10 years in Mecca, and for 10 more years in Medina. Allah took him unto him at the age of 60, and he scarcely had 10 white hairs on his head and in his beard. Narrated Al-Bara. I did not see anybody in a red cloak looking more handsome than the Prophet. Narrated Malik. The hair of the Prophet used to hang near his shoulders. Abu Ishaq said, I heard him relate it more than once. He always laughed when he related it. Narrated Shuba. The hair of the Prophet used to hang down to the earlobes. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger said, today I saw myself in a dream near the Kaaba. I saw a whitish brown man, the handsomest of all brown men you might ever see. He had the most beautiful lima hair hanging down to the earlobes you might ever see. He had combed it, and it was dripping water, and he was performing the tawaf around the Kaaba, leaning on 2 men, or on the shoulders of 2 men. I asked, "Who is this?" It was said, "Messiah, the son of Mary." Suddenly I saw a curly-haired man, blind in the right eye, which looked like a protruding out grape. I asked, "Who is this?" It was said, "He is Messiah ad-Dajjal." Narrated Anas. The hair of the prophet used to hang down up to his shoulders. Narrated Anas. The head hair of the prophet used to hang down to his shoulders. Narrated Qatada. I asked Anas bin Malik about the hair of Allah's messenger. He said, "The hair of Allah's messenger was neither much straight nor much curly, and it used to hang down till between his shoulders and his earlobes." Narrated Anas. The prophet had big hands, and I have never seen anybody like him after him. The hair of the prophet was wavy, neither curly nor straight. Narrated Anas. The prophet had big hands and feet, and I have not seen anybody like him, neither before nor after him, and his palms were soft. Narrated Abu Huraira. The prophet had big feet and a good-looking face, and I have not seen anybody like him after him. Narrated Anas. The prophet had big feet and hands. Narrated Anas or Jabir bin Abdullah. The prophet had big feet. The prophet had big hands and feet, and I have not seen anybody like him after him. Narrated Mujahid. We were with Ibn Abbas, and the people mentioned Ad-Dajjal. Someone said, "The word kafir, unbeliever, is written in between his Ad-Dajjal's eyes." Ibn Abbas said, "I have not heard the prophet saying this, but he said, as regards Abraham, he looks like your companion, yet the prophet Muhammad, and as regards Moses, he is a brown curly-haired man riding a camel and reined with a strong jute rope, as if I am now looking at him getting down in the valley and saying Labaik." Chapter 69. At-Talbid. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. I heard Umar saying, "Whoever braids his hair should shave it on finishing Ihram. You'd better not do something like Talbid." Ibn Umar used to say, "I saw Allah's messenger with his hair stuck together with gum." Narrated Ibn Umar. I heard Allah's messenger while he was in the state of Ihram, and his hair was stuck together with gum, saying, "Labaik, Allahumma labaik, labaik, la sharika laka, labaik, in alhamda wa nimata laka, wal mulk la sharika lak." He did not add anything to those words. Narrated Hafsa. The wife of the prophets, I said, "O Allah's messenger, why have the people finished their Ihram after performing the Umrah, while you have not finished your Ihram after your Umrah?" He said, "I have done Talbid of my hair, and have decorated my hadis with garlands, so I shall not finish my Ihram till I have slaughtered my hadi animal for sacrifice." Chapter 70. Hair parting. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet used to copy the people of the scriptures in matters in which there was no order from Allah. The people of the scripture used to let their hair hang down, while the pagans used to part their hair. So the Prophet let his hair hang down first, but later on he parted it. Narrated Aisha. As if I am now looking at the shrine of the hair parting of the Prophet while he was in the state of Ihram. Chapter 71. Locks of hair. Narrated Ibn Abbas. Once I stayed overnight in the house of my aunt Maimuna bint al-Harith, and Allah's messenger was with her as it was her turn. Allah's messenger got up to offer the night prayer. I stood on his left, but he took hold of my two locks of hair and made me stand on his right. Narrated Abu Bisr. The above hadith, but he quoted Ibn Abbas, said, took hold of my two braids on my head. Chapter 72, Al-Qasa. Narrated Ubaydullah bin Hafs, that Umar bin Nafi told him that Nafi, Mawla, Abdullah had heard Umar saying, I heard Allah's apostle forbidding Al-Qasa. Ubaydullah added, I said, what is Al-Qasa? Ubaydullah pointed towards his head to show us and added, Nafi said, it is when a boy has his head shaved, leaving a tuft of hair here and a tuft of hair there. Ubaydullah pointed towards his forehead and the sides of his head. Ubaydullah was asked, does this apply to both girls and boys? He said, I don't know, but Nafi said, the boy. Ubaydullah added, I asked Nafi again, and he said, as for leaving hair on the temples and the back part of the boy's head, there is no harm. But Al-Qasa is to leave a tuft of hair on his forehead unshaved, while there is no hair on the rest of his head. And also to leave hair on either side of his head. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's messenger forbade Al-Qasa, leaving a tuft of hair here and there, after shaving one's head. Chapter 73. The application of perfume by the wife on her husband. Narrated Aisha. I applied perfume to the Prophet with my own hands when he wanted to assume the state of Iram, and I also perfumed him at Mina before he departed from there to perform Tawaf al-Ifada. Chapter 74. To apply scent to the head and beard. Narrated Aisha. I used to perfume Allah's messenger with the best scent available, till I saw the shine of the scent on his head and shine beard. Chapter 75. Combing one's hair. Narrated Sa'd. A man peeped into the house of the Prophet through a hole while the Prophet was scratching his head with a midrai, a certain kind of comb. On that the Prophet said to him, if I had known you had been looking, then I would have pierced your eye with that instrument, because the asking of permission has been ordained so that one would not see things unlawfully. Chapter 76. The combing of the hair of the husband by his menstruating wife. Narrated Aisha. I used to comb the hair of Allah's messenger during my periods. This hadith also reaches us through another chain. Chapter 77. To start combing the hair from the right side. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet used to like to start from the right side as far as possible in combing and in performing ablution. Chapter 78. What has been mentioned about musk. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, Allah said, every good deed of Adam's son is for him except fasting, it is for me, and I shall reward the fasting person for it. Verily, the smell of the mouth of a fasting person is better to Allah than the smell of musk. Chapter 79. What kind of scent is recommended? Narrated Aisha. used to perfume the prophet before his assuming the state of with the best scent available. Chapter 80. Whoever did not refuse the scent. Narrated Tumama bin Abdullah. Anas never used to refuse a gift of scent, and used to say that the prophet never used to refuse a gift of scent. Chapter 81. Ad-Darira. Narrated Aisha. During Hajjat al-Wada, I perfumed Allah's messenger with Darira with my own hands, both on his assuming ihram and on finishing it. Chapter 82. Creating artificial spaces between the teeth to look beautiful. Narrated Abdullah. Allah has cursed those women who practice tattooing, and those who get themselves tattooed, and those who remove their face hairs, and those who create a space between their teeth artificially to look beautiful, and such women as change the futures created by Allah. Why then should I not curse those whom the Prophet has cursed? And that is in Allah's book. Yet he's saying, and what the apostle gives you, take it, and what he forbids you, abstain from it. 59:7. Chapter 83. The use of false hair. Narrated Humayd bin Abdurrahman bin Auf, that in the year he performed Hajj, he heard Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan, who was on the pulpit and was taking a tuft of hair from one of his guards, saying, "Where are you religious learned men? I heard Allah's messenger forbidding this false hair, and saying, the children of Israel were destroyed when their women started using this." Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Allah has cursed the lady who artificially lengthens her or someone else's hair, and the one who gets her hair lengthened, and the one who tattoos herself or someone else, and the one who gets herself tattooed. Narrated Aisha. An Ansari girl was married and she became sick, and all her hair fell out, intending to provide her with false hair. They asked the Prophet, who said, Allah has cursed the lady who artificially lengthens her or someone else's hair, and also the one who gets her hair lengthened. Narrated Asma. The daughter of Abu Bakr, a woman came to Allah's messenger and said, I married my daughter to someone, but she became sick, and all her hair fell out, and because of that, her husband does not like her. May I let her use false hair? On that the Prophet cursed such a lady as artificially lengthening her or someone else's hair, or got her hair lengthened artificially. Narrated Asma. The daughter of Abu Bakr, Allah's messenger, has cursed such a lady as artificially lengthening her or someone else's hair, or gets her hair lengthened. Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's messenger said, Allah has cursed such a lady as lengthens her or someone else's hair artificially or gets it lengthened, and also a lady who tattoos herself or someone else, or gets herself tattooed. Narrated Sa'id bin al-Musayyab. Muawiyah came to Medina for the last time and delivered a sermon. He took out a tuft of hair and said, I thought that none used to do this, use false hair, except Jews. The Prophet labeled such practice, the use of false hair, as cheating. Chapter 84. Ladies who remove hair from the face, eyebrows, etc. Narrated Alqama. Abdullah cursed those women who practice tattooing, and those who removed who removed hair from their faces, and those who created spaces between their teeth artificially to look beautiful, such ladies as changed what Allah has created. Yaqub said, "What is that?" Abdullah said, "Why should I not curse those who were cursed by Allah's messenger and are referred to in Allah's book?" She said to him, "By Allah, I have read the whole Quran, but I have not found such a thing." Abdullah said, "By Allah, if you had read it carefully, you would have found it." Allah says, "And what the apostle gives you, take it, and what he forbids you, abstain from it." 59:7. Chapter 85. The lady who lengthens her hair. Chapter 85. The lady who lengthens hair artificially. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet has cursed the lady who lengthens her hair artificially, and the one who gets her hair lengthened, and also the lady who tattoos herself or others, and the one who gets herself tattooed. Narrated Asma. A woman asked the Prophet, saying, "O Allah's Messenger, my daughter got measles and her hair fell out. Now that I got her married, may I let her use false hair?" He said to her, "Allah has cursed the lady who lengthens hair artificially, and the one who gets her hair lengthened artificially." Narrated Ibn Umar. I heard a prophet saying, or the Prophet said, "Allah has cursed the lady who practices tattooing, and that who gets it done for herself, and also the lady who lengthens hair artificially, and that who gets her hair lengthened artificially. The Prophet has cursed such ladies." Narrated Ibn Masud. Allah has cursed those women who practice tattooing or get it done for themselves, and those who remove hair from their faces, and those who create spaces between their teeth artificially to look beautiful, such ladies as change the futures created by Allah. Why then shall I not curse those whom Allah's Messenger has cursed, and who are cursed in Allah's book too? Chapter 86. The woman who practices tattooing. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, "The evil eye is a fact, and he forbade tattooing." Narrated Abdullah. As above, 827. Narrated Abu Juhayfa. The Prophet forbade the use of the price of blood and the price of a dog, the one who eats usury, the one who gives usury, the woman who practices tattooing, and the woman who gets herself tattooed. Chapter 87. The woman who gets herself tattooed. Narrated Abu Huraira. A woman who used to practice tattooing was brought to Umar. Umar got up and said, "I beseech you by Allah, which of you heard the Prophet saying something about tattooing?" I got up and said, 0. "O chief of the believers, I heard something." He said, "What did you hear?" I said, "I heard the Prophet addressing the ladies saying, 'Do not practice tattooing, and do not get yourself tattooed.'" Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet has cursed the lady who lengthens hair artificially, and that who gets her hair lengthened in such a way, and the lady who practices tattooing, and that who gets it done for herself. Narrated Abdullah. Allah has cursed those women who practice tattooing, and those who get it done for themselves, and those who remove hair from their faces, and those who artificially create spaces between their teeth to look beautiful, such women as alter the futures created by Allah. Why should I not then curse those whom Allah's Messenger has cursed, and that is in Allah's book? Chapter 88 Pictures. Narrated Abu Talha. The Prophet said, "Angels do not enter a house in which there is a dog or there are pictures." Chapter 89. The punishment for picture makers on the day of resurrection. Narrated Muslim. We were with Masruq at the house of Yasar bin Numayr. Masruq saw pictures on his terrace and said, "I heard Abdullah saying that he heard the Prophet saying, the people who will receive the severest punishment from Allah will be the picture makers." Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger said, "Those who make these pictures will be punished on the day of resurrection, and it will be said to them, 'Make alive what you have created.'" Chapter 90. The obliteration of pictures. Narrated Aisha. I never used to leave in the Prophet's house anything carrying images or crosses, but he obliterated it. Narrated Abu Surah. I entered a house in Medina with Abu Huraira, and he saw a man making pictures at the top of the house. Abu Huraira said, "I heard Allah's Messenger saying that Allah said, 'Who would be more unjust than the one who tries to create the like of my creatures? Let them create a grain, let them create a gnat.'" Abu Huraira then asked for a water container and washed his arms up to his armpits. I said, "O Abu Huraira, is this something you have heard? I from Allah's Messenger?" He said, "The limit for ablution is up to the place where the ornaments will reach on the day of resurrection." Chapter 91. Pictures made on things that are to be trodden on. Narrated Aisha. Allah's Messenger returned from a journey when I had placed a curtain of mine having pictures over the door of a chamber of mine. When Allah's Messenger saw it, he tore it and said, "The people who will receive the severest punishment on the day of resurrection will be those who try to make the like of Allah's creations." So he turned it, the curtain, into 1 or 2 cushions. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet returned from a journey when I had hung a thick curtain having pictures in front of a door. He ordered me to remove it, and I removed it. Aisha added, The Prophet and I used to take a bath from a container. Aisha added, "The Prophet and I used to take a bath from one container of water." Chapter 92. Whoever disliked to sit on pictures. Narrated Aisha. I purchased a cushion with pictures on it. The Prophet came and stood at the door but did not enter. I said to him, "I repent to Allah for what the guilt I have done." He said, "What is this cushion?" I said, "It is for you to sit on and recline on." He said, "The makers of these pictures will be punished on the day of resurrection, and it will be said to them, 'Make alive what you have created.' Moreover, the angels do not enter a house where there are pictures." Narrated Abu Talha. Allah's Messenger said, "Angels of mercy do not enter a house where there are pictures." The sub-narrator Busr added, "Then Said fell ill, and we paid him a visit. Behold, there was hanging at his door a curtain decorated with a picture. I said to Ubaydullah al-Kawlani, the stepson of Maimuna, the wife of the Prophet, didn't Said tell us about the picture the day before yesterday?" Ubaydullah said, Didn't you hear him saying, except a design in a garment? Chapter 93. It is disliked to offer salat wearing clothes with pictures. Narrated Anas. Aisha had a thick curtain having pictures on it, and she screened the side of her house house with it. The Prophet said to her, "Remove it from my sight, for its pictures are still coming to my mind in my prayers." Chapter 94. Angels do not enter a house in which there are pictures. Narrated Salim's father. Once Gabriel promised to visit the Prophet, but he delayed and the Prophet got worried about that. At last he came out and found Gabriel and complained to him of his grief for his delay. Gabriel said to him, "We do not enter a place in which there is a picture or a dog." Chapter 95. Whoever does not enter a house having a picture in it. Narrated Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. I bought a cushion having pictures on it. When Allah's messenger saw it, he stopped at the gate and did not enter. I noticed a sign of hatred for that on his face. I said, "O Allah's messenger, I turn to Allah and his apostle in repentance. What sin have I committed?" He said, "What about this cushion?" I said, "I bought it for you to sit on and recline on." Allah's messenger said, "The makers of these pictures will be punished severely on the day of resurrection. And it will be said to them, 'Make alive what you have created.'" He added, "Angels do not enter a house in which there are pictures." Chapter 96. Whoever cursed a picture maker. Narrated Abu Juhayfa. That he had bought a slave whose profession was cupping. The Prophet forbade taking the price of blood and the price of a dog and the earnings of a prostitute, and cursed the one who took or gave riba usury, and the lady who tattooed others or got herself tattooed, and the picture maker. Chapter 97. Whoever makes a picture will be asked to put life into it on the day of resurrection. Narrated Ibn Abbas. I heard Muhammad saying, "Whoever makes a picture in this world will be asked to put life into it on the day of resurrection, but he will not be able to do so." Chapter 98. To ride as a companion rider on an animal. Narrated Usama bin Zayd. Allah's messenger rode a donkey saddled with a saddle covered with a fadakia velvet sheet, and he made me ride behind him. Chapter 99. 3 riders on one animal. Narrated Ibn Abbas. When the Prophet arrived at Mecca, the children of Bani Abdul Muttalib received him. He then mounted one of them in front of him and the other behind him. Chapter 100. The mounting of the owner of animal and somebody else in front of him. Narrated Ayub. The worst of 3 persons riding one animal was mentioned in Ikrima's presence. Ikrima said, Ibn Abbas said, in the year of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet came and mounted Kutam in front of him and Al-Fadl behind him, or Kutam behind him and Al-Fadl in front of him. Now which of them was the worst of and which was the best? Chapter 101. To mount a man behind another man on an animal. Narrated Muad bin Jabal. While I was riding behind the Prophet, and between me and him there was only the back of the saddle, he said, O Mu'adh. I replied, Labbaik, O Allah's Messenger, and Sadiq. He said, Do you know what is Allah's right upon his slave? I said, Allah and his apostle know best. He said, Allah's right upon his slaves is that they should worship him alone and not worship anything else besides him. Then he proceeded for a while and then said, O Mu'adh bin Jabal. I replied, Labbaik, O Allah's Messenger, Sadiq. He said, Do you know what is the right of the slaves upon Allah if they do that? I replied, Allah and his apostle know best. He said, The right of the slaves upon Allah is that he will not punish them if they do that. Chapter 102. To mount a woman behind a man who is Damaram. Narrated Anas bin Malik. We were coming from Khaybar along with Allah's Messenger, while I was riding behind Abu Talha, and he was proceeding, while one of the wives of Allah's Messenger was riding behind Allah's Messenger. Suddenly the foot of the camel slipped, and I said, The woman, and alighted hurriedly. Allah's Apostle said, She is your mother. Saul resaddled the she-camel, and Allah's Messenger mounted it. When he approached or saw Medina, he said, Aibun, Ta'ibun, Abidun, Li Rabbina Hamidun. Chapter 103. To put one leg on the other while lying down. Narrated Abad bin Tamim's uncle. I saw the Prophet lying down in the mosque and placing one leg on the other.